Welcome back to Financial Independence 101. This is Mike. Today I want to talk to you about why unions really are bad for America. And I do understand that there was a time when unions actually did something good, but that's not what's going on now. And the problems that we see now, if we could eliminate unions, we would actually have a better lifestyle in America for the average American citizen. But unions are bad for America for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to get into this and I'm going to discuss this. I've pulled up a few different articles to show different viewpoints on this, but at the end of this video I'm going to give you my direct viewpoint, which it just really can't be refuted. We'll talk about this some more coming up. So I was talking about saying that there was a time when unions actually did stuff that's perceived as good for workers, as in instituting the 5-day work week, instituting the 40-hour work week. Workers were extremely taken advantage of back then, but nowadays the world is much different. And with that, employees aren't forced to work anywhere. You can work at a lot of different places. When a lot of this stuff was going on back in the 40s and earlier, and the unions actually were making some strides and changes to increase quality of life and trying to improve the middle class, that's different then than it is now. Nowadays, they have a negative impact. Currently, there are only 10% of American citizens that are in unions, that benefit from unions. So let's back this up. Only 10% of American citizens benefit. That's it. 90% of American citizens do not benefit at all from unions. Well, 100% of American citizens are damaged and forever damaged by the work of the unions. Before I get into the UAW strikes, which people perceived as a good thing, I want to show this here. We got new vehicle average transaction prices, and it's been steadily on the rise. Of course, rose sharply 2021, 2022, 2023, and it's kind of doing a capitulation over the top here at $48,000 as an average price for a vehicle. The reason that it's at that price point isn't because of the fact that we don't have $100,000, $80,000, $90,000 vehicles. No, yeah, they're sitting on the lots. They're not selling as well. We have a very bad economy. We are in a technical depression. I mean, however, I can prove it 6 ways to Sunday. It's pretty easy to prove with even the government's fake numbers. But most people are struggling to get by. Either they're not buying a new car, or they're buying the cheapest option they can, or one of the lower end options. They're not going out buying Lambos. They're not buying Lamborghinis right now. That's the thing. New vehicle average prices are lower, but the actual higher end price is higher. The per units, the units sold, is dropping drastically. See, Biden was out there marching with UAW. Oh, he's out there for the people, but wasn't it just like a few months earlier that at the Super Bowl that he was complaining about shrinkflation? He didn't do anything about shrinkflation. What he did was march with the UAW to encourage inflation. See, we've seen rampant out of control inflation, and the fact that we look at the numbers differently than we did back in the 80s when they truly were 20, 30% inflation numbers back then. We truly have it now. We just manipulate it now more than we did in the 80s. When I say we, the government, and that's both sides. Nobody wants to admit to rampant out of control inflation, and it's not to the point of hyperinflation yet. But what they do going forward with when they start lowering these rates, that could cause it. But looking at this, Biden didn't help. He didn't help people. He helped rampant inflation. Anybody that knows how to debate, they actually know the opposite side's argument, and that's how you debate. Well, with this, I'm open to, hey, okay, let me see. Am I wrong about labor unions, the benefits of labor unions? Let's talk about that real quick, because then we're going to get into the negatives. But higher wages, that is true. 10% of American citizens will get higher wages versus the 90% that don't. So you're special little group because you pay your dues. Better benefits, yeah, 10% of American citizens are going to get nice, cushy benefits as many other positions are dissolved. And hey, maybe it's only be 9% or 8%. The more they strike, the less union jobs exist because they just dissolve. They go away. Greater upward mobility. I don't see that at all. I have never seen that in a unionized, but you know what? I'm not in a unionized area. I don't really see that though. I don't really see how you can have greater upward mobility due to unions, other than the fact that I do hear the stories where people go, they just don't show up to work. They go on a day of drinking instead of getting fired. The unions protect them, so they still have a job and they can still move up. That can't be held against them, which is crazy. But hey, that's part of being a union. Better working conditions. Now, I will give them that. So the thing about better working conditions is that does cost more money, and every single penny, every fraction of a cent, they round off the fractions of pennies, that's passed to the consumer. 100% of it. We're not going to say, okay, well, let's just take a $6 billion loss because of the unions today, this month, this quarter. They're not going to do that. Every cent's passed to the consumer. The consumer demand drops, so production drops, output drops, and then there goes 313,000 jobs from the UAW. That's how it works. And greater job security. Yeah, greater job security. You're protected by the unions, and you can't get fired for gross negligence and all these other bad things. Well, missing work, and that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. I mean, the free market should decide, not a union protecting you. Oh, I'm sorry, 10% of people, which next year will be 9%. All right, let's get into the drawbacks of the unions. I told you all the wonderful benefits of being in a union. Union dues. Unions charge dues to pay the salaries of union leaders and workers during a strike. No, they pay dues. Yeah, they pay dues for salary. The unions are there for themselves. They're not there for you. You are the product. You are the product. They represent you. They make sound like they're all great and all that stuff. They're making money off you. They are vampires sucking on your work. They're sucking off of your work, your productivity, because technically unions have a zero output, a zero productive output. They don't produce a product or service. The service is allegedly working for you. Less autonomy. Union workers are bound by the decisions made by the union. Maybe you disagree with those decisions. Again, getting into this, a lot of people that didn't want to join a union are overly pressured to join a union, which shouldn't happen, but it happens all of the time. And I mean, sometimes there's even violence involved. I don't have an actual account of that to show, so I'll retract that, but I've heard of that. Improper use of funds. Some unions spend union dues on six-figure salaries for leaders and luxurious headquarters. And yeah, your dues. So how much are dues? I mean, I've heard about $500 a month. Depends on where you're at. I don't know 100%. So it might be more, so it might be less. So $6,000 a year. So they negotiate you a $5,000 to $10,000 raise, but you're giving them $6,000. Is it really worth being in the union? And you get to watch cars become unaffordable to the American citizens. So that's great. Good job. Workplace tension, because unions create tension between workers and employers. Union workers may have lower levels of trust and satisfaction in the workplace. Slower advancements. And see, that's the thing. It just had the same article. The positives were great upward mobility, but then slower advancement. Because the way it is, it's more like sort of the military mentality where you're just years in and rank versus purely paid for performance. I mean, you should be able to be in a job for 6 months and be rewarded for a high level of output and performance. Not, you need to be here 12 years before anything can happen with you. That's really not the right way to do things. It's not the right way to motivate employees. And that is definitely not anything that works in any modern construct. But yet, that's how unions work. Quickly touching on the teachers union, and nothing against the teachers. Teachers have such a hard job. Let me ask my wife. She'll tell you. She'll teach you on that one. She'll learn you on that one. But teachers may disagree with political positions of their union. Union fees may be expensive, so teachers don't really make a lot. Even in California, $100,000 doesn't go very far. You need to make over $300K to live a middle-class lifestyle in most places in California where teachers make $100,000. Taxpayers are not directly represented during the negotiations process. Members may be asked to participate in union activities without compensation. Union activity such as strikes may result in fewer education opportunities for the community. Lots of cons for teachers in a union. More cons: since unions support raises and promotions for employees based on seniority, employee initiative may be stifled. Well, employees want to move up, but they're based on seniority. I already talked about that. That's not the way it should work. It should work pay for performance. Employers may struggle to reward exceptional employee performance due to the labor contracts. And unions decrease business competition by raising wages and benefits. This is where it hits 100% of American citizens in the pocketbook. Unions cause inflation. Raising wages of 10% of Americans so that every good and service that you go out and buy and consume go up. That 10% live a better lifestyle, but 90% pay the extra with no improvement. That's just the way it is. Unions are not doing good for 90% of American citizens. Let's get back to the UAW strike. Looking at this, how many jobs are lost during a UAW strike? 300,000. And that was not good. Those jobs are gone. They're not coming back. And every time they strike nowadays, that's what happens. Now, in the early days when they would strike, you would get some better improvements. They still passed the cost along to American citizens back then. I mean, don't get me wrong on that. But nowadays, they pass the cost along and we lose jobs and we lose productive output. That's in the form of GDP. Last article real quick. This one talks about how unions are hurting working people under the guise of protecting them. And a lot of companies, because of unionization in 2020, have switched to contract workers instead of having their own workers. So instead of having an employee with benefits and insurance and retirement, let's just contract them out to where you're going to get your 1099K in the mail. Of course, if you make $600 or more, then that's it. You got to pay your own insurance. You got to figure out your own retirement. And don't even get me started on Social Security. But yep, this is another problem with unions. They hurt workers. And yeah, there's some small benefit for a very small fraction of society, but everybody pays in the end. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Like, subscribe, Financial Independence out.